Welcome, everybody, from the campus of the University of Notre Dame. I hope everyone is well. Thank you for taking the time for joining us today. It's a gorgeous day on campus. It's sunny. It's beautiful out, but it's cool. It's about 40 degrees. So it's definitely jacket, wearing weather here on campus, but we'll take any day we can when the sun is out here on campus. Yesterday was our students' final day of classes, and so they're in the quiet or study days right now, and finals will begin in just a couple of days. And so there's a quietness and intensity to campus as students are preparing for their finals. No students, of course, use the study days to go out to the bars and to relax and let their hair down at all. That would not happen with any Notre Dame student. Anyways, we'll be jumping into finals here real soon. We hosted over the weekend, Sunday and Monday, Notre Dame Day. We did a 29-hour broadcast. No other university in the country does anything like that. It was very successful. We raised over $3 million for about 770 different student clubs and organizations and other entities here on campus. It actually generates more money. Notre Dame Day generates more money for student causes than any other thing else during the year. And think about that. Civil engineering students that are going and digging wells and for potable water in Africa, building footbridges in Bolivia for communities that don't have access to school and to healthcare and basic food and other necessities. To groups like the Folk Choir and Glee Club that raise money for their spring and summer trips as they go around the country and world, sharing the gifts of music. Far and wide, there's so many different initiatives. It's a really beautiful day to see the breadth and depth of Notre Dame's reach as being a force for good in the world. So we're coming off of that. Over 29,000 distinct gifts were made, which is extraordinary. And what a blessing that the Notre Dame family, alumni, parents, and friends have stepped up. And for those of us here, it's just so invigorating to see such widespread support for our students and the great work that they're doing. We have a lot coming up. This week is Board of Trustees week on campus. So the trustees are in committee meetings today and tomorrow, full board meeting on Friday. Next week, May 7th, we have Garth Brooks returning to campus for a sold-out stadium concert, praying that the weather is better this time around than the last time he was here. And later in May, we're going to be holding two commencement events. The traditional commencement, which will be the middle of May, and then over Memorial Day weekend, we're going to have a long-awaited and much-anticipated commencement for the class of 2020, who you recall at the beginning of COVID went away for spring break and never came back. So it'll be, I'm sure, a very emotional gathering, and so many of those students, graduates now, and their families are going to be coming back for that celebration. Then we've got reunion the first weekend of June. And not only is this a traditional reunion, but we're also going to have the celebration of the 50th anniversary of women undergraduates on campus. So it's going to be a really big celebration there. And then later in June, we have a Billy Joel concert on campus. There might be a few tickets remaining, very few for both those concerts. So if you're interested, please take a look and try to come back to campus for those, or we'll see you at reunion as well, or the two commencements. It's my distinct pleasure now to introduce to you Notre Dame's Vice President for Research, the first ever to hold this relatively new role. Robert J. Bernhard is a professor in aerospace and mechanical engineering, and he is an expert on acoustics and noise control. Bob holds 2 patents and is the author of over 150 research papers. He's a proud son of Iowa, and he and his lovely wife, Deb, have 4 grown children, and 3 grandchildren as well, including twins. Bob, now, welcome. It's great to be with you. You've been in this role as our inaugural VP for research for 15 years now, completing your 15th year. And I'd love to have you reflect on your tenure, but let's start. How did we get you to leave a very important role at Purdue and come to Notre Dame? And tell us how you got started and maybe a little bit about your 15 years.
Yeah. Well, first of all, a little bit of my Notre Dame story. As you indicated in the introduction, I was born in Iowa. Actually, it was those communities where I was born were farming communities that had been settled in the 1880s, essentially by Irish and German Catholics. In fact, my ancestors claim to be Luxembourg. And it's been interesting when I first read God, Country, Notre Dame. In the first 4 or 5 pages of the book, Father Hesburgh mentions ancestors from Luxembourg and connections to farm families in Iowa, Hesburgh family farm that were farming in Iowa. Anyway, that's sort of as things started. Catholic schools, Notre Dame fan, as in elementary school and high school in the glory days of the 60s. I watched the game of the century actually live.
Wow.
But the big connection started when in high school, one of the faculty members, Sister Eugene, started pushing me that I had to go to Notre Dame. Robert, you have to go to Notre Dame. She started with the eraser end of her pencil, tapping me on the head. Have you signed up for the SATs yet? Have you written your essay? And so on. So actually, she had gotten 2 master's degrees from Notre Dame in the era where the clergy could come back to Notre Dame during the summer and get master's programs. Hers were in American history and government. And so she taught those classes, and so she was a very, very outspoken and active Notre Dame advocate. So I did apply actually and had good SAT scores, got admitted, but couldn't afford the $5,000 a year that it cost for study at Notre Dame in those days. My father said, no way. So Sister Eugene wasn't able to arrange a scholarship, and there was no Lunani to help Bob Bernhard get a scholarship. So I ended up having to turn down my admission. But the seed was planted and was planted pretty deep. So, quickly through the rest of the story, I went to Iowa State, graduated from there with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, went to Westinghouse Electric Corporation and worked for 4 years as an engineer. Learned a lot, had a great opportunities there because I got kind of on a fast track, had some great mentors, but knew it wasn't where I wanted to be. And so before I got too deep, I decided that I better leave. Went back to Iowa State for my PhD, and actually when I got my PhD, I applied to 4 universities. And Notre Dame was one of them. Again, Sister Eugene's seed had been planted. So I actually got a very quick call from Purdue and actually visited. Unheard of these days, but within 2 months of applying, I had an offer in hand from Purdue.
Wow.
And Notre Dame called. I said, I got to come and visit. So I put Purdue off. Was walking out the door for a January faculty visit, and the department chair called and said, we're having a blizzard coming in when you're scheduled to be here, so we have to delay. We'll reschedule. I said, that's fine. Well, I'll come out and see you. But we ultimately never did get a something scheduled, and Purdue was waiting for an answer. So I did accept the job at Purdue.
And how many years, Bob, were you at Purdue?
So 25 years. It was fantastic. And after about 21 years, I don't know how many people remember Frank Incorpera as the Dean of Engineering.
I certainly do. He was fantastic. Yeah.
He had come from Purdue. He was the head of my school there and appointed me to some important position. So he called and said, Bob, I want you to replace me here as dean. I had just taken another job, so I couldn't. I said, Frank, I made too many promises. Well, 3 years later, he put my name in again when this new position for vice president for research came. And so that, by then I knew what I wanted to do. Fortunately, I was self-aware enough to know what I couldn't do well and what I wouldn't do well and lose job. I knew that. So I recognized immediately from the prospectus that this was the job for me.
Yeah.
And, so I took the job in 2007. Mm-hmm. It was, all that thinking around how this job was right for me was really reinforced when I got here, because everything that I did, every decision I had to make, I had experience from something in my career. Mm-hmm. And the end of the story, by the way, just so I don't forget this, is that I did get a chance to contact Sister Eugene in the retirement home in Dubuque. Uh-huh. Tell her that it took me 40 years, but I did make it.
How did she? So Sister Eugene was not to be denied. How did she react when you told her the news that you were coming to be a vice president of research, the first ever at Notre Dame?
She was so excited, and then people would bring her out to football games in the fall, one football game a year. Wow! So I got a chance to host her here and show her around and so forth. I don't know, but I think I was her favorite alumnus after that.
I bet you were. That's fantastic. It shows to say, it goes to show that some of the best things take a time to wait, and God blessed us with having you come here. So tell us a little bit about 15 years ago, being the pioneering VP of research. What did you find here, and what were the initial challenges that you needed to attack to make Notre Dame a stronger research institution?
Yeah, it was an interesting. I spent time walking the campus when I first got here to find out what was going on. There were one thing I was really impressed with was that the faculty standards used to hire and tenure and promote people here was really good. The quality of the people were excellent. Mm-hmm. And I think they were invigorated. This was 2 years after Father John had been named president. Mm-hmm. And I think the faculty were invigorated by, his inauguration speech and talking about unsurpassed undergraduate education and preeminent research university with Catholic character. I kept hearing that over and over again.
Right.
The things that I found actually that would be a challenge were mm-hmm. one, that the faculty really aspired to be a preeminent research university, but the understanding of how to get there was spotty. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our faculty think about things like, how are we going to do that? And right. they needed some more of that detail. Mm-hmm. The second thing I found was that the world for science and engineering especially, but also for social sciences and to some extent the humanities, mm-hmm. Their world was changing to be more interdisciplinary, more team research oriented, and so forth. And the Notre Dame was not moving as fast on those fronts as some of the other universities around were. Mm-hmm. So I knew that we had to, develop those capabilities and mm-hmm. that culture. The third thing was I felt like we were lacking in infrastructure pretty significantly. Mm-hmm. And that's both physical infrastructure and human infrastructure. These are the things that support the faculty and students to do their research programs. Right. Like I like to say, faculty and students can do awesome work on research programs, but you got to have them do what they do best, and then you have to fill the gaps with the staff and scientists and other people, so that the faculty can do what they're really good at, and the staff can fill those other things that are necessary for the sponsors and other things. So we work pretty hard at both physically buying the kind of instruments that would make us nationally competitive and so forth, and then hiring staff people that would help to support the research programs.
In the success, Bob, that you have experienced under your leadership for the past 15 years is nothing short of extraordinary. In fact, I may be so bold as to suggest that when 50 years or 100 years from now, they look back at the Jenkins administration, they're going to point to two things that really distinguished, his tenure as leader of the university. One is going to be that research was taken to a whole new level at the university. And then secondly, we became not just a great national university, but a truly global university. And of those two accomplishments, I would say we've made the most advancement to date on the research front. Can you tell us a little bit about where were research expenditures 15 years ago when you arrived here? Where are they today? What kind of progress have we made relative to other top universities?
Well, we keep track of a lot of metrics, and I do want to emphasize. I'm going to talk a lot about dollars, and as Lou previewed, it'll be research expenditures, because that's the sort of the metric that everybody pays attention to. But we watch a lot of things, and I do consider my responsibility to help research and scholarship across campus. So we're doing a lot to help the humanists and the social scientists, for example. But on the front, where other people watch us, there's a metric called research expenditures, which is how much money we spent on research each year. And so it's a measure of the size of our programs, and in many ways also a measure of how competitive we are, because all these grant programs are very competitive. In 2007, we had $80 million a year in research expenditures. And this last year, our number was about 250 million.
So more than tripled. You've more than tripled. How does that stack up relative to other top 20 institutions?
So the universities that I watch are the private universities of the AAU, the American Association of Universities. That would be all the Ivy League schools. It would be the Vanderbilts and Dukes and so forth and so on. It's 27 universities, I think, all the ones that everybody would recognize as elite private universities. We so as from a growth rate perspective, our growth has exceeded everybody in the whole set. And
we number one out of 27 schools.
Right. If I do a different cut on the numbers, and I take, for instance, the medical schools at many of these universities are just the behemoth, right? If the university has $1 billion in research expenditures, 800 million of it is the medical school or whatever. This is typical.
Right.
We have data where we can take the medical school information off, and we can show the rest of the university. And many of these universities, like University of Chicago and Northwestern and Duke, they have very prestigious programs in the non-medical school side of their universities. We have moved from maybe the lower quarter of that group to just close to the median of that group. If I take away their medical school expenditures and just look at their other expenditures. So, I think Duke is in our sights now. If we have a good year and they have an average year, we'll pass them this year. But we're ahead of Northwestern and Yale and Chicago and other prestigious universities.
That's just extraordinary. You got to feel so proud about that. But tell us, why is that important? Why is that important for a Catholic university to be a very strong research university?
This research all feeds into the really bigger objective, which is to be a force for good in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our programs are about discovery and application, and again, this is across the board. Discovering new math theorems and the new philosophical truths, and writing a book that somebody would reference. These programs really potentially change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we're increasingly looking at that standard and saying, in the Catholic tradition, we pursue knowledge in all fields, applied or not, and we're hoping that we make a difference in all those fields.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are building more and more of a conversation now around what is it is important in our disciplines that we can contribute.
Mm-hmm. Could you give us a few examples, Bob, of pioneering research on both the applied and maybe the non-applied sides that have made a huge contribution, have been that force for good in the world that flows from Father Soren's original vision?
Yeah, there's all kinds of examples here, and I'll try to make sure that I get kind of an assortment of them. I would say that one of the investments we made early on was into something called the Initiative for Global Development.
Mm-hmm.
Over about 3 or 4 years ago, Lou, it became endowed as the Pulte Institute.
Yes.
And they have set about from the very beginning of doing monitoring and evaluation of international development programs, global development programs, whether it be agriculture or education, or in some cases, gang violence in Honduras. These kind of programs.
Mostly in the developing world, Bob?
Mostly in the developing world, yes.
Okay.
Right. And most of them were basically someone else is essentially the deliverer,
Mm-hmm.
the people who are actually delivering the programs.
Mm-hmm.
But Pulte Institute comes in and does an evaluation and tries to learn lessons, publish those lessons so that the next round of programs then can be designed with those learnings in mind.
Got it.
And they've gotten to the point now where the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, has actually asked them to be the evaluator of other evaluation programs. So I think, from the perspective of gaining the confidence of a
Mm-hmm.
sponsor to basically be the go-to resource to actually look at these kind of programs and be the independent thought broker on this is really fantastic.
That's fantastic. Another example maybe that comes to mind?
One of the things that was an early success for us and really big for momentum building and helpful for us was we won a Center for Nanoelectronics. In many ways, they're talking about beyond silicon, or it's when Moore's law breaks down, what are we going to do next kind of thing. And there's a consortium of companies called the Semiconductor Research Corporation that has been funding, lots of fundamental research on the newest materials and devices that you could build computers out of,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can go, faster and more dense and so on. In 2007, 2008, right after I got here, we had the opportunity to go after one of those. We won it, and now we're in our third one of those SRC awards. Each of them 5 years long. So
Mm-hmm.
we've had almost 15 years of continuous funding. All of it's extremely competitive. We have beaten MIT and Stanford and Santa Barbara and other places in competitions in each of those renewals that we've had. Of course, that the impact of this
Mm-hmm.
is having devices and materials and circuits that actually do that next generation of computing.
So recently, we just got a big award, didn't we, for the exploration of 6G wireless
Right.
through our Wireless Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so one of the other investments we made was the Wireless Institute, and it's built around a couple of really exceptional faculty members. They have been, when they were relatively young when I got here, and I remember meeting a couple of them early on because they had gotten some national young faculty awards. Now that's all blossomed, Lou. We've got those guys national reputations, doing really awesome things. The particular award that they got was a $25 million 5-year grant. We lead a consortium of 20-something other universities for this, and we're looking at not only Gen 6, but beyond. So it's called Spectrum X for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right?
Yeah.
And their work spans everything from new technologies to actually informing policy. One of the things that's emerging now is that the spectrums are getting crowded, and the federal government has to establish policy around how they're going to distribute that.
Right.
While they have to keep enough of the spectrum for national security reasons and so on.
Right.
All this has to be sorted out, and that's some of the major things that this new center is looking at.
There's some really amazing headsy stuff that makes a difference in daily life for people everywhere. Some of which is life-saving, some of which is like making our handheld devices more powerful, faster, and more consistent across the plane. But one of the questions that a lot of our alumni have still is, if we really focus on strengthening the research agenda, does it take away from the faculty's commitment to teach? Can you talk about that perceived dichotomy? And is in fact good research, does it enhance good teaching?
Yeah. So the best teachers have a passion for doing research and understanding new things and discovering new things, which is what the definition of research is. It's the ultimate learning experience.
Right.
You're learning something that nobody else has ever learned. So it's really an amazing situation.
Right.
And the best, brightest minds want to do that. They still want to be active doing those kind of things. In addition, they're really good teachers. They're passionate. They bring this excitement to the classroom, and they, get people excited. I know, my 4 children are all engineering graduates, and I'd ask them who was their favorite instructor. I happen to be on the faculty as well, so I knew these faculty, and the people that the undergraduates follow around are these really good researchers. They're like the gurus. It's like, oh God, they're doing such really cool things.
Yeah.
And so on. So I think Tom Burge did a study just to sort out this question, and he asked, what the teaching ratings were for the faculty that were active researchers and those that weren't. And he found that the active researchers actually had better teaching evaluations than the other faculty. Lou, you probably remember what the numbers looked like, but
yeah.
It was no surprise to me. I knew that this is the kind of thing that's
right.
That my own children experience, and I heard it all the time when I was active with the undergraduate students. There's a lot. And then, Lou, I think I could talk a little bit too, maybe if you're interested, about how active the undergraduates are in our research programs. Because
I think it'd be great if you said a few words about the importance of graduate students in the research agenda with faculty leads as well as undergraduates.
Yeah, I would say that the workforce, the main workforce for our research programs are our graduate students. They're, I forget to mention this so much, but to me, it's just obvious that our research programs are built around our graduate student, and those students are getting this experiential component in some field, as well as all the learning they do in the classroom. And it's a real growth experience for these people. It's life-changing, basically. undergraduates are also in these labs. Now, their experience isn't as deep, and it isn't, that transformational thing to them, but it is an enhancement experience for them in most cases, because for many of them, it's an experiential thing. It's like, oh, I'm doing something different in the classroom. I get it. That kind of moment happens.
Right.
And there are so many involved here, Lou. It's interesting. We sort of didn't have good data on this until we shut down all the labs for the pandemic.
Right.
And then when we brought them back, we had to put in controls on how many people could be, what the density of people could be in the labs. That's when we found out how central the undergraduates were, because one of the things we had to do, unfortunately, is because the undergraduate students were circulated in a different population than the graduate students were.
Right.
We had to make policy that the undergraduates couldn't be in the labs in those first days.
Right.
And what we ended up having is all the faculty giving us their rosters of people that they could, that they would have in their labs.
Right.
There were a number of labs that never reopened because they were so dependent on undergraduates that they couldn't function without the undergraduates.
Right.
And then there were a whole bunch of labs that had typically had so many active undergraduates in them that when they reopened, they could open with all their graduate students,
right,
and still maintain the density limits that we had.
Yeah.
Often they have as many undergraduates working in the lab as they do graduate students.
It's a really important piece. I have a son who's a junior in high school right now, and he's getting some, college recruiting pieces, and just got a piece this week from Vanderbilt, which was the big headline was, come to Vanderbilt and pursue your research, become a researcher. And a lot of the top students, they know that discovery is the highest form of learning. They want to be active in that discovery process. They don't want to wait to be graduate students. They want to get involved in pioneering new knowledge and applied science and engineering that can make a difference in this world. I think it's really critical. And have you seen more undergraduate students asking questions about what does the research, capabilities look like? How can I be engaged?
Yeah, actually, admissions had heard this so often that they came to us for a storybook. And so we created a booklet for them that just spotlighted research programs in all the different disciplines, so that they had good stories that were well vetted, well told stories. And we update that every year. I think we still do that. I know we were doing it first. We updated it every year so that they had that brochure that they could offer for those really exceptional students that are asking, well, can I work with faculty and do independent research when I come to Notre Dame?
Right. So let me ask you this question. I mean, because this is not an unfounded concern. There are some universities that top universities that have focused so much on the research agenda that they have drifted from their commitment to the undergraduate student and teaching. How do we advance research at Notre Dame without drifting from our commitment to the undergraduate student and drifting from the promotion to tenure and other levels of faculty who are very much committed to being gifted teachers in the classroom as well?
Well, it's interesting. Anecdotal information let me say, I like to say that when we were strategizing about what to do here, we wanted to skate to where the puck would be.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we were always intending that we would have unsurpassed undergraduate education. But one of the things you noticed was some of those premier universities that, in my generation, when I was going to school or when I was a young faculty member, were ignoring the undergraduate school students, are actually pivoting around to embracing the undergraduate experience students now. It's actually interesting. They're, the leaders that if you chased them, you'd be always behind them, right?
Yeah.
They're changing. At Notre Dame, though, it's never been compromised. I sit on the Provost Advisory Committee, which looks at the university-wide applications for promotion and tenure. And we always require excellence on both measures.
Mhm.
And that will never change. The
Yeah.
provost, the provosts come in, they know that's what they do. Most of them would only be selected as provost if they believe that.
Mhm.
And then there's so much memory here that we can do it all. We
Mhm.
can do that. And
Yeah.
I've seen as many cases um, denied for
Mhm.
promotion or for tenure for teaching as I have for research. And I don't
Mhm.
expect that to ever change.
And that's pretty much an anomaly, right? You don't see that as much at other top universities. If you're an extraordinary researcher and maybe not as good in the classroom, you're likely to get
I
promoted.
think the difference, and maybe this is getting into the weeds, Lou, but I think the difference is at many places, is that people will trade off teaching and research.
Yeah.
And so it's like well, if we have a poor teacher but a great researcher, we'll have somebody else in the department, like a teaching professor, who can
Got it.
cover.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
We don't do that here. It's got to be good on both dimensions.
Got it. That's fantastic. And my understanding is that the student teacher evaluations in recent years have been the highest they've ever been. And when I meet with students anecdotally, which are hundreds in per semester, they talk about. I ask them who's their best teacher, and they just gush about their faculty experiences. And when I was a student here in the 1980s, we had some great teachers, but we also had some who weren't as stellar. And I'm hearing great reviews for the faculty. Talk a little bit about where do we go from here, Bob? You've had experienced under your leadership meteoric growth in the whole research program and our faculty here. What's left to do? Where do you see us? What are the great strides that we need to make over the next 5 to 10 years?
So interesting. When I finished my 10 years, in fact, so I'm on 5-year terms.
Yeah.
So I had, was finishing up my second 5-year term and was, out for renewal. And I thought to myself, I have to make a decision about whether I want to do this or not.
Yeah.
And the one reason I chose to come back for a third term is because I wanted to look to the future. And I wanted to, I have a chance, given the experience that I'd had, the things that I'd seen, to look into where Notre Dame could go in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I convinced Tom Burrish that we could put together an all-star committee of faculty.
Mm-hmm.
And try to do this research vision initiative, we refer to it as,
Mm-hmm.
to look out 20 years to what Notre Dame, how Notre Dame could be. And we didn't start this way, but we eventually adopted the terminology, how it could be distinguished and distinctive,
Mm-hmm.
or great and unique.
Mm-hmm.
And the "and" wasn't in there at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But we were convinced that that's what our aspiration was, to find out how we could be both distinguished and distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I knew coming in, Lou, that that we had to increase the scale and the competitiveness and our programming.
Yeah.
But I also knew that we needed to have a mission signature on our research programs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in my little engineering brain, I'm thinking, I don't think I can do both those simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So the strategies that we talked about earlier, I decided to emphasize the competitiveness and scale and growth, and didn't ignore mission.
Right.
Sort of kept it on the back burner. And then in the third tenure, when we started doing this research vision initiative, I thought of it as a pivot.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna keep growing. We got momentum now. We know where we're going on competitiveness, but let's think about how we really start to emphasize the mission.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out in the research vision initiative study, that's what we heard.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to about 80 external thought leaders from a broad range of higher academics and higher education academics and funding agencies and sponsors and companies and so on. And then we also talked internally. But external voices were really impressive. And they kept repeating over and over again that your path to being distinguished and distinctive is to build on your distinctiveness. So one of our interviewees with a former president of an AAU university, one of these elite prestigious universities, he said to us, "Your mission is your great gift." It was a drop the mic moment. You go like, "Whoa, what did we just hear?" And that kept resonating and resonating with the committee. There are so many potential. So first of all, we're already recognized in the research world as being distinctive. And there are opportunities that come to us because of that mission. And there are networks that we have because of that mission.
Right.
And all of these pieces fit together so that we think skating to where the puck will be.
Right.
We can be a great university built off of being a Catholic university.
That's fantastic, Bob. And I know we've often talked about to have a Catholic voice at the table, to bring the moral perspective that is Notre Dame when we talk about technology and research and pioneering advancements. To have that moral perspective, you don't get a seat at the table unless your science and engineering is really strong. So you don't even get a chance to offer that moral perspective unless you are respected by your peers of doing top research. You've helped us get there, and now it's really critical that we're true to that moral voice, and we bring that to the table, our distinctive Catholic character. So before we close, are there any, in your 15 years, a few favorite memories where this job has taken you and kind of opened your eyes and touched your heart in ways that there kind of be memories that will stick with you for a lifetime?
Yeah, I have two things I'll mention here. One is that we've been on some trips, some international trips, which I would refer to as hybrid trips. There's been a business connection and a business purpose, but there's also been the personal stuff. And one of them was a advisory council spring meeting. This is the Graduate Studies and Research Advisory Council. And a couple others were advisory council related, but we didn't make them official advisory council visits. And it's just completely awesome, Lou, to be able to travel and have the Notre Dame name open doors for you and get you a chance to see things and have all the friends and alumni connections at these places. It is just a completely different experience than a regular tour. I would the top one in my mind is the trip that we took to CERN, to the International Accelerator Facility in Switzerland, France border, and saw the things that our physicists were doing there. And that humongous facility there. And then we flew the next day into Rome, and the combination of the Rome Gateway connections, the connections that alumni opened up for us. We had some. I had some. I don't. Ken Hackett, I think.
Sure.
The former head of CRS was the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican.
Yes.
He opened doors for us, and actually in a couple of different ways. But we just saw some fantastic things.
Yeah.
And then I had 2 trips to Kenya and Uganda with Father Bob, and there was another trip to Israel with 3 Holy Cross priests and Joe Kernan and his wife. It's a little farm boy from Iowa doing some pretty amazing things. So that's one set of memories. another set of memories, Lou, is coming up here. The thing Father John hosts this dinner for all of the President's Leadership Council for the honorary doctorate degree winners and other dignitaries that are coming to commencement every year. And I just think back to all those experiences and all the people that we've met at those experiences. And, it's intimate setting, and it's just awesome. So
yeah, I would have to say I agree with you. Notre Dame's convening power never ceases to amaze me. And because of our distinctive niche in higher education, many people are attracted to say yes to an invitation to come back to campus, to receive us on the road. There's a respect out there, and that's an important responsibility for us to live up to and to strengthen that. Well, I can't thank you, Bob, enough for your leadership these past 15 years. There's probably no area of the university that has experienced more exponential growth than what you have led on the research side of the university, and what that's meant for so many students, and what that's meant for the 94% of the world's population that does not have a college degree. By being able to make improvements to their lives, we haven't even talked about all the rare disease research that's going on, and we could go on and on talking about conflict resolution work through the Keough School and Kroc Institute, or talking about the architecture group working to rebuild inner cities and making things more. The stories go on and on, but your leadership and guidance and the quality of faculty that we're hiring and growing and retaining here at the university augurs for a lot of good to be done going forward.
You're giving me too much credit, Lou. The faculty and the deans that really did all the hard work on this. But it was a really great opportunity to be a visionary and the builder and the architect here. That's my role, and I was very, very fortunate to find this job. Frankly, very fortunate.
Well, like any good Notre Dame man, you deflect the praise well, and but know how grateful we are, and our prayers will go with you. Thanks for being with us today. As we always do, we want to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and as we always do, we'll close with a prayer to Our Lady. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Take care. God bless. Thanks again, Bob, and go Irish.